Hello everyone, welcome back to the barn, and I know what you're thinking, and no, this setup is not permanent. My family is on vacation. I am not, because I'm a very, very busy man. And so, the camper that you have seen in the background, and also my usual sitting device, are both gone for the week. I expect that things will be back to normal by the next week that this happens. But at any rate, it is still the barn, it is still me, unfortunately. And today I'm going to talk about, a matter of great controversy among many people. And that is the film Thor, Love, and Thunder. Now, so there's a big difference for this movie between my out of the theater walking out reaction and my sitting up late at night thinking about it reaction 5 to 6 days later. But I've definitely had some time to sit on it. I've tried not to read or watch too much of what other people are saying, but from what I have seen and heard and watched, the negative reaction, the overwhelming negative reaction from most YouTube critics and critics of all kinds has definitely put a damper on my first reaction to this movie. My first reaction was, in the back of my mind I knew it was not good, like it wasn't a great movie, but my goodness, I had a good fun time. And I feel that honestly that's probably the best compliment you can give this movie. Like it can't get any better than just, I had a good time with it. Which, that's really sad, because I think that there were a lot of moments and a lot of ideas and a lot of just concepts that showed really good potential for, if they were fleshed out, to be something really cool. I'm just gonna say, the scene where Gore the God Butcher entangles our three heroes, Thor, Jane Foster, and Valkyrie. Oh my gosh, that is a big spider over there. That scene where he entangles them and he sort of says to their faces what their struggles are. I thought there was a lot of heavy-hitting stuff there. And if the film had developed that stuff more, it could have been something affecting. It could have been a great story. But as it is, it's only flashes and little shades of emotionally affecting stuff. And most of that comes through prior association with these characters. I think especially for the scenes with the Guardians at the beginning, the only reason that any of it is really any sort of enjoyable, apart from some fun visual gags like Thor sitting in contemplation while the Guardians all fight, the only reason it's any fun is not really because of the dialogue or anything like that. It's all too chaotic and too silly and all of this sort of thing, and the jokes really don't have a whole lot to them. But it's the characters. The characters are what give this movie any sort of strength. And again, the strength of these characters is based on the superior films of the past. It's a poorly constructed narrative that is only enjoyable because it's a sequel, which is really a bad offense. But when I say it's only enjoyable, I'm referring only to the plot. There are many things to enjoy about this movie. I'll list a couple off the top of my head. First and foremost, Russell Crowe as Zeus. I don't know. That might be my favorite thing. I think comedically speaking, it was definitely my favorite thing about the movie. If you want to watch anything from this movie, you can totally just, there's probably not clips online yet, but when they come out, just look up a clip of Russell Crowe as Zeus, and just have the time of your life. I love Russell Crowe as a comedic actor. I'm a big fan of his dramatic roles and everything. He does a good job, but him as the comedy guy, he cannot be beat. And in this movie, he really is not beat by anyone. Chris Hemsworth had some moments in this movie. I particularly enjoyed where he was doing the splits between the two ships. And his face at that moment is just priceless. It's just like, it's just, oh my word. That was very enjoyable. And he's not given a lot to do, which is, a very usual complaint about these low concept action movies. These action movies with bad stories. He's just not given a lot to do. And the feel of his character is there, but none of, the real push of the character. Just because everything feels so loose and just, weightless. Everything about the story is just weightless. Though there is a arc sort of fighting to get out of this movie, I think, the bare bones of a story are there for Thor. But again, just like with the characters, the arc, Thor's arc in this movie only works because of the amazing groundwork put down by the Russo brothers in Infinity War and by the writers of Ragnarok in Thor Ragnarok. Thor has had the worst time of all. He's just, everyone around him is dead. And I see why Taika would bring back Jane Foster, because Jane Foster is the only major character from his past, other than his buddies from Ragnarok, who aren't dead. But, spoiler alert, she dies too. But here's the thing. I'm not completely 100% behind this story decision, but I think I see how it can work. Where Jane Foster sacrifices herself for Thor, which is different from just the absolute massacre that had befallen his people beforehand. I think what the loss of Jane Foster for Thor was, I think, a example of sacrificial love. It's a redemptor for death, a redeeming death that caused Thor to fully come back to the heroism that he started with, because he goes through the gauntlet of losing everything, and that shuts him off from everyone in a very physical way in Endgame. But then, he gets his act a little bit together to be with the Guardians, but his heart isn't really in it. And that's pretty cool. It's a movie about Thor recapturing his love and his thunder. And yeah, in Ragnarok it's sort of like that, but it's only really the thunder that he's trying to see within himself. Now he has to reevaluate his purpose, which, yeah, that's all cool. Reevaluating your purpose, all this sort of thing. But it's only cool in name only. I think the film just does not do a great job of getting him from the point A to the point B of his arc. I see his arc, I see it, I appreciate it, but the film is just too quick and unbalanced and just, it's too bonkers to really give Thor his great character moments. That's something Ragnarok did a great job of, is being bonkers, but really genuinely just going straight-laced in the moments that they had to. I think a good example of how Love and Thunder doesn't do this is in the scenes with Jane and Thor on the boat. Not only do those scenes not look very good visually, but I think there's a little bit too much of that awkwardness and clowning around that was really funny when Thor was doing it with Valkyrie in Ragnarok, but it's not good between Jane and Thor. And yes, there are moments of seriousness, but they're undercut because they stand on their own. They don't serve the story as well. And that's because this movie is just badly structured and all that sort of thing. Alright. Yes, so Thor has an arc, but it's messy, not great. Jane's arc, on the other hand, is very, very confusing because it all seems like it's leading up to one thing, and then it makes a complete 180 for the sake of Thor's arc. And here's what I'm talking about. So, throughout the film, it seems that they're setting up the duality of Jane, where her cancer-ridden, which is genuinely, like, there's some heartbreaking stuff to that. Like, oh man, like the scene where she is in the bed and Thor is like, and they're talking, that got me. I mean, there's a lot of moments in this film that got me, but they didn't really deserve to. That's the catch. But it's setting up that Jane has this duality, and her Thor self is something disingenuous. So what I'm talking about, like a great example, is the scene where she's looking in the mirror, and in the mirror she sees her cancer-ridden self, and she's scared, and she's like, no, and she turns back into her Thor self, and then she breaks the sink. It's pointing to the fact that she needs to let go and be the person that she is, because her Thor self is ultimately a lie. It's a facade. Excuse me. But unfortunately, that is sort of undercut by her choice to sacrifice herself completely independently from Thor. So she's in bed, Thor's doing his big showdown, and she just sees Mjolnir float up, and from that, I assume she just like knew that Thor needed saving, but really, there's no indication that she did. What it looks like is that she's trying to be the hero, that after she and Thor had that touching conversation where she agreed to stay back and survive for the sake of their love, she decides to put on that mantle that has been portrayed as a facade. And yeah, the sacrifice sort of works for Thor's arc, but it sacrifices the arc of Jane in the process. It was all leading towards her rejecting, ultimately, her Thor persona, but then she doesn't. And at the end she does say, I'm Jane Foster, but like the statue made for her is of her Thor self. It's all very mixed messaging there. It's not great. I really like Christian Bale in this. I think he turns in as like a really fun performance. His character, again, is messy and confusing. The end especially has a whole lot of problems because not only have we been sort of confused narratively by all the weird going-ons, but it also takes place in this weird void where I don't know what's happening. Like, at the end, I didn't realize that his daughter had come back. There was nothing really there to, like, show me that she had. And then when he says, protect my love, it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right that he would make that 180. Plus, this movie sacrifices, in order to be brisk, it completely sacrifices any subtlety. And Thor just literally gives the thesis of the movie just like word for word. He's like, Gore, you can pick love or you can pick selfishness and hate. What you gonna pick? I'm gonna pick love because I'm the hero and I learned love. That's what I'm doing. Pick love. Pick love, Gore. Pick love. And that is another thing that permeates the film, is a complete lack of any sort of nuance to the way the themes are developed. And I think it works better than it would in other movies because of the silly tone. But at the end of the day, it makes everything seem very skeletal, like bare bones when it comes to thematic development. And it also makes it all feel just disingenuous and rushed and not great. Valkyrie had that one scene with Gore that I mentioned up top, where he talks about how, I mean, Valkyrie was failed by the gods, just like Gore was. That is the only cool thing, story-wise about this movie, really, is the whole thing with Gore as the villain being failed by the gods, because I think that's a really cool subversion, because the gods have been portrayed as so silly in Ragnarok and subsequently like Endgame or whatever you look there, that I think it's a great thing to have a character who has been hurt by that flippantness, that flippancy of the gods. And that ties into Thor's journey, because he has to learn to stop being flippant. Because he's very flippant at the beginning of the film. And he has to sort of learn to not be that way and to actually care about other people again. But the whole daughter thing and the whole love and thunder at the end, while sweet, it doesn't mesh. It just doesn't go. It's just ambiguous, and I see where the pieces are of it all, but it just doesn't meld together. That all being said about the story, I loved Gore's performance, and I think his aesthetic was a genius wave. I loved the aesthetic of Gore. I think it maybe got a little bit repetitive by the end, but oh my goodness, it's something really creepy. I love the monochrome, and that fight scene on his big moon planet, where it's all monochrome and stuff, that looked genuinely incredible. It was incredible. The other fight scenes were kind of wishy-washy and that sort of thing, especially the one at it wasn't Olympus, but it was where Zeus was. That one was just a big splash of gold. But the monochrome one, incredible. I cannot stress that enough. But unfortunately, it's like the one really good action sequence in this movie. The one at the beginning is too evocative, I think, of the opening of Ragnarok. I mean, it's kind of original, and it's got great visuals to it, but it's just a little bit too redundant. Oh boy. I laughed at this movie. I felt some things. I felt sorry for the characters in places, and I felt some of the drama there. Like the opening scene with Gore and all that sort of thing. Like, it started out strong there, but it ultimately just doesn't go anywhere. It all falls to nothing. And yeah, I mean, I enjoyed my time, but the longer I think about it, I realize that it's like, it's just because I liked those characters in the other movies, and they're back, and they're having some some dumb adventures. The adventure itself just doesn't sell the characters well enough. It's not good enough of a movie. And I'm curious to see what happened behind the scenes, because it just seems like it's incomplete. It's got a lot of artifacts of being filmed in 2020. The big voids of the volume and people not being together or whatever it is. But it was just lacking in a lot of places. It's kind of sad, which is an ironic thing, because I thought it was a pretty funny movie, and I quite liked it coming out of the theater, but if you watch it, you'll probably like it, but unfortunately, it is not a good sign for things to come in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.